I worked late at the agency a couple of weeks ago. The glow from my computer screen was familiar. I was trying to meet deadlines while dealing with my breakup. It felt normal enough. I packed my bag and headed out into the busy streets of downtown. I took a deep breath and walked home. It was around 10 p.m. when I first noticed it. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. I could feel someone behind me, though. I glanced back, and there was a figure a bit further down the street. The streetlights flickered as I quickened my pace. I started thinking about ducking into a cafe. I turned left, and the figure mirrored my move. My heart started racing. I hurried around another corner, but so did they. I took smaller streets, avoiding alleys, but they stayed close. I felt trapped. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. I didn't know what to do. It was foolish to think I was imagining it. I looked back again. They were still there, lurking in the shadows. As the days went by, I saw that figure more often. It was like they were always watching me. I started changing my routes. I walked along bright avenues and tried to avoid dark corners, but it was pointless. I could feel them lurking somewhere. One night, I caught a glimpse of their face in the glow of a street lamp. It took my breath away. The emptiness in their eyes felt cold, like a void staring into my soul. Each time I left work, I felt their presence. I tried to shake it off, to forget, but it was impossible. I started feeling anxious while working. My designs felt rushed and messy. Every part of my life was tainted by this shadow. Then, one night, I decided it was time to confront this fear. I walked home, determined. My heart thudded in my chest as I turned down a narrow street. I could feel the air grow heavy around me. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, slow and steady. I stopped and faced the figure. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice shaking. No response. The figure just stood there, unmoving. A chill ran down my spine, and I took a step back. I turned a corner, hoping to put distance between us. When I looked back, the figure had vanished. I stood frozen in the dark. Even the streetlights felt dimmer. My mind raced. What just happened? I looked around but saw nothing. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still watching me, lurking somewhere just out of sight. That cold emptiness in their eyes haunted me. I thought I'd put this all behind me, but I knew it was just the beginning. I woke up the next morning feeling drained. The haunting emptiness in that figure's eyes followed me into my dreams. I tried to shake it off as I prepared for work, but my coffee tasted bitter. I sat at my desk staring blankly at a sketch that should have inspired me. Instead, all I could think of was that feeling of being watched. After another long day at the agency, I made a conscious decision to leave earlier. Maybe if I got home before it got dark, that disturbing figure would stay away. I packed my things quickly and headed out, the afternoon sunlight still shining bright. It felt good to be in daylight, but still, I felt a flicker of anxiety creeping in. As I walked, I took a different route, one that led me through a bustling market. People filled the streets, and I felt safer surrounded by the crowd. I strolled past vendors selling their goods, breathing in the scent of fresh produce and pastries. There was a sense of normalcy among the chaos. But as I approached a narrow alleyway, I hesitated. A loud crash shattered the air, followed by a scream. I turned and saw a woman being pushed to the ground by a man. My heart raced, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But a part of me felt I should help. I knew the sick feeling of fear all too well. I dashed towards them, but as soon as I got close, the man let go of her and bolted away. The woman looked shaken, her hands trembling as she struggled to collect herself. I rushed to her side, my fear momentarily replaced by concern. "Are you okay?" I asked, breathing heavily. She nodded, but her eyes darted around, searching for something. I think he was following me," she whispered. The panic in her voice sent chills through me. My own experience flooded back. "I know that feeling," I said hesitantly. "I've felt someone behind me, too. It's terrifying." "I thought I lost him," she murmured, pressing her hands to her temples. "He was just watching." The weight of her words clung to me. My hands shook as I glanced back towards the direction he had run. "We should call the police," I suggested, but as I pulled out my phone, My eyes caught a flicker of movement down the street. There, standing at the edge of the market, was a figure. They were watching us, observing from a distance, their face obscured by the shadows of the alley. I felt that cold dread creep back into my chest. "You need to go," I said urgently to the woman. "Let's get out of here." We hurried away, but the figure never followed. It was as if they had blended back into the shadows, content with the distance they maintained. My heart raced as I glanced back one last time. I couldn't shake the feeling that they knew me, that they were waiting for something. When I returned home, my mind was cluttered. I tried to push away the thoughts, but they lingered like a bad smell. Just as I sat down to catch my breath, the lights flickered. My heart dropped. I was alone, but that familiar coldness settled around me, tightening like a vice. And then the doorbell rang. I froze, my heart pounding. The doorbell rang again, slicing through the silence of my cramped apartment. With perspiration forming at my temples, I slowly approached the door, each step heavy with dread. What if it was him, that figure from the market? I chided myself for letting my imagination spin out of control, but the fear was suffocating. Peering through the peephole, I blinked in disbelief. A young man stood on my doorstep, slightly disheveled but looking harmless enough. I opened the door just a crack. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "Sorry to bother you," he said, his voice shaky. "I was just running from a couple of guys. They were shouting my name. I thought they might have followed me here." A fresh wave of anxiety washed over me. Here was another soul lost in the grips of fear. "You can come in," I offered, despite my better judgment. Locking the door behind him, I thought of the woman from earlier. Was this a pattern? As he stepped inside, I noticed the panic etched on his face. "I don't know why they want me," he said, running a hand through his messy hair. "I've never done anything to them." I wasn't sure how to respond, but I felt a surge of empathy and unease. They didn't follow you here, did they?" I stammered, glancing out the window. "No, I don't think so. I mean, I didn't see anyone behind me. It was just a feeling." That feeling. It echoed my own experiences. I settled onto the couch, and he did the same, his body tense. "What happened?" I asked, drawing in a breath to steady myself. The man shifted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was leaving work late. It's never felt unsafe before, but tonight was different. I saw shadows. I heard footsteps." He swallowed hard, as if reliving the experience. I nodded, trying to be reassuring. "You're safe now," I said, even though I wasn't sure if that was true. "What did they look like?" He paused before answering, his eyes clouding over. "I didn't see their faces, but I know they were watching me before I started to run." Just with those words, a chill washed over me. I glanced towards the door, the sense of being watched returning like an unwelcome guest. The shadows seemed deeper, the world outside darker. "You don't think they know where you live, do you?" I ventured, my voice trembling slightly. "I hope not," he replied, his expression distant. "But I can't shake the feeling that I'm not safe anywhere." As silence enveloped us, I felt it, a prickling awareness. Someone was out there. My thoughts raced, piecing together the threads of fear that were weaving through our lives. Then suddenly the lights flickered again, and we exchanged glances. His eyes widened. "What was that?" And before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from the other side of the door. The sound rattled through the room, leaving no doubt. Someone was trying to get in. I jumped at the bang, my heart racing as dread coiled in my stomach. "What was that?" the man next to me asked, looking wide-eyed and frozen in place. "I don't know," I whispered, tilting my head toward the door. Another thud echoed, this one harder and more insistent. I instinctively pressed myself back against the couch, trying to calculate our next move. "Maybe we should call the police," he suggested, his voice trembling. I could see the panic rising in his blue eyes, mirroring my own. Picking up my phone felt like a risk, as if showing any sign of weakness would invite danger through the door. "Wait," I said, holding my finger to my lips, motioning for silence. I strained to listen. For all I knew, the one outside had already heard us. The only sounds were the muffled breath of the man beside me and the pounding of my own heart. The banging continued, repeating like a Morse code of terror. There was a pause, and I leaned forward, desperate for any clarity. "What did they want with you?" I whispered, keeping my voice low. "I don't know," he said, his frustration evident. "I've never crossed paths with them, I'm just an intern." He ran his hands through his hair again, leaving it even messier. Could it be a mistake? Didn't have an answer. I thought about my own life, how I had recently felt eyes on me, shadows lurking just beyond my reach. Maybe they're looking for something else and you just got caught in the crossfire. The door rattled again, more violently this time. I scanned the room for something, anything to defend ourselves. The kitchen looked like it held some potential, but I hesitated. There was no way of telling who or what was beyond that door. "Maybe we should lock the windows too," I said, rising from my seat. "If they break in, we might need a way out." He nodded, seeming to regain some focus as adrenaline kicked in. As I moved toward the kitchen, another shadow passed by the window. I froze. My gut twisted and every instinct shouted for me to sprint far from this place. "Did you see that?" I gasped, my voice trembling. He turned quickly, eyes wide. "What was it?" "I don't know, but I think—" My voice trailed off as the shadows around us thickened, darkening the room even more. Before I could react, the front door slammed open with a thunderous crack. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim light of the landing. My breath hitched in my throat. I felt every urge in my body screaming for me to run. But where could we go now? "Get down!" I yelled, pulling him with me as I dove behind the kitchen counter. My mind raced, every second stretched as the figure moved slowly into the apartment. I could barely make out the features in the dark, but I could feel the tension in the air. Danger wafted like smoke. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered off, and the world around us vanished into a void, leaving me with only the noise of my heartbeat and the scent of fear. "Who are you?" shouted the figure from the darkness, shoving furniture aside. I grabbed the nearest item, my mind scrambling for how this nightmare would end. The darkness wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket. I could barely see my own hands, let alone the figure in front of us. I tightened my grip on the kitchen knife, its cold metal barely reassuring against my quaking fingers. "Is anyone here?" the voice asked again, loud and scratchy. I could hear the uncertainty in it now, a hint of hesitation cutting through the bravado. In that moment, it flickered between ominous and pathetic, the two extremes feeding my growing terror. I could hear the man next to me, his breath coming in quick, short bursts. I was terrified that he would give us away. Screaming or gasping would only draw more attention. But then my ears picked up something else. A faint sound, something moving outside. It felt like a warning. "Shh," I whispered urgently, motioning for him to stay still. My eyes darted to the vague outline of the door, looking for any signs of movement. The figure inside the room was still shuffling things around, but my focus remained outward. I had to know if someone else was out there. With my heart pounding, I inched closer to the edge of the counter. I could almost see flashes of light filtering through the darkness, small flickers of something before the quiet engulfed us again. Suddenly the lights blazed back to life. I flinched, squinting against the harsh glow that illuminated the living room. The man had turned to face us. His features were now clearer. A dirty hoodie, disheveled hair, and eyes that looked more frightened than threatening. "I just need to talk," he shouted, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you." I held my breath, still crouched behind the counter, assessing him. "Talk about what? Who are you?" He looked over his shoulder, a flash of panic crossing his face. "You need to understand, this isn't what it seems. I'm trying to help you." "Help us?" I questioned, my voice dripping with skepticism. The words caught in my throat, a wave of doubt crashing over me. I still felt exposed even with the lights on. The man beside me whispered, "Maybe we should—" Before he could finish, another noise erupted from outside, a series of quick footsteps, accompanied by harsh voices that echoed down the hallway. I felt my stomach drop. Whatever this man had to say, we might not get the chance to hear it. "They're coming," I hissed, a surge of urgency pushing me to my feet. "You need to explain, now." "I was sent to warn you," he cried, desperation lacing his voice. "It's about the others. If they find you first, you won't survive." "Who are the others?" My mind raced with questions, the pieces of the puzzle slipping just out of reach. But before he could reply, the door flew open again. But this time it wasn't just one figure. 3 men stormed in, dressed in dark clothes, their expressions hard and intent. "Get down," I shouted, instinctively pulling the intern to the floor. My heart dropped as I realized we were trapped. Suddenly, I made a decision. I had to act fast. I crouched behind the counter, preparing for whatever was about to happen next. That's when I noticed it. Something on the floor near the entrance that caught my eye. A small silver flash. A weapon? "Please," I whispered. "We need to move." I couldn't waste any more time. The intensity of the men entering the room twisted my gut. I leaned closer to the edge of the counter, my eyes locked on that silver flash. It was definitely a gun, no doubt about it. My thoughts raced. It seemed like our only chance. "Stay here," I whispered to the intern, my voice barely a breath. "I'll get it." Just as I shifted away, the man in the hoodie reached out and grabbed my arm. "Wait, you don't know what they want," he urged, panic evident in his eyes. I shook him off, desperation coursing through me. "And you do? They're armed. We have to go now." A loud crash rang out, followed by the heavy footsteps of the men moving through the living room. They were locking us in, stealing our options away. The reality hit me like a cold wave. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. With one quick glance back at the intern, I dashed forward, crouching low to the floor, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for the gun, fingers trembling as I grasped the cold metal. "Get them!" one of the men shouted, and I froze. They were heading straight for us. The shuffling of feet and the sound of voices grew louder, but all I could focus on was the weight of that gun in my hand. I turned just in time to see the shadow of one of the men entering the kitchen, his determined expression cutting through the chaos. "Now!" I shouted without thinking. I didn't even know what I planned to do with the gun. The man in the hoodie leaped to block our path, throwing his hands out. "Stop! We can work this out." The room went silent, the tension thick and tangible. For a split second, I thought it might work. Maybe he was right. But then one of the men advanced, shoving the hooded figure aside. "Enough!" he barked, eyes wild with authority. "We're not here to negotiate." With fear overtaking me, I raised the gun. "Get back!" My voice came out stronger than I felt, but those words sent a jolt of shock through the room. The men halted, surprised by my sudden confidence. "Put it down, girl," said one of the men, a smirk on his face. "You don't want to do this." I didn't want to do this, but something in me snapped. My survival instincts kicked in. I couldn't back down. "Tell me who you are," I shouted, my hands shaking but steady. "What do you want?" "Just give us the girl," he said, nodding slightly toward the intern. "What makes you think I'll hand her over?" The man tilted his head, the grin fading from his face. "Because if you don't, we'll take her by force." My mind spun, trying to piece together the gravity of his words. I was being played, cornered into a situation I hadn't asked for. The tension thickened again, a storm tightening around us. But then came the strange sound outside. A horrendous clanging echoed from the rear of the house. The men stiffened. What was that? "Now's our chance," I whispered to the intern, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But before I could make my move, a shadow loomed at the entrance, blocking our only escape. "Run!" I screamed. But it might have been too late. Before I could process what was happening, the shadow lunged at me. A body collided with mine, knocking the gun from my hand. It clattered to the floor, a loud thud ringing out like a death knell. My heart sunk. I felt exposed, completely unarmed, as the men surged forward. "Grab her!" someone shouted, and I frantically looked for options. The intern stood frozen, eyes wide, clearly unsure how to react. "Get down!" I yelled at her, hoping to pull her from danger. I turned and ducked, narrowly avoiding a fist that swung preemptively in my direction. Panic surged through my veins. I had to keep moving. The kitchen was small, and with bodies barreling in, there was little room to maneuver. I darted around the table, trying to outsmart our attackers. In the chaos, I spotted that silver flash on the floor, my only hope. One of the men followed close on my heels, his breath heavy and menacing. "You're not getting away," he roared. I could hear the intern whimper behind me, but I had to focus. My fingers found the gun just as I felt the man's grip on my shirt. I twisted, throwing my weight against him, and he stumbled back, giving me room to regain my composure. I caught my breath, gun clutched tightly in my hands. "Stay back!" I shouted again. My voice was more desperate now, but I couldn't afford to appear weak. The man's eyes widened at the realization that I was ready to fire. "Kid, you don't know how to use that," he sneered, trying to regain control of the situation. "Maybe not, but I'm not scared," I retorted, though I could feel my stomach turning in fear. I moved toward the doorway, aiming at the nearest man. He paused, his bravado wavering. Then something inside me flickered to life, a determination that pulsed like electricity through my veins. "Leave us alone," I demanded, realizing I was standing on the precipice of a decision. I could risk everything or make a last-ditch effort to turn the tide. "Don't be stupid," another man shouted, his face darkening, rage brewing beneath his cautious surface. The two would move together, it was evident. I could see them plotting my fate. Then the loud clang sounded again, followed by a crash of shattering glass. The distraction stunned everyone, even the men. The opportunity was just what I needed. I made a split-second decision. "Now!" I shouted to the intern, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the back door. We charged forward just as a third figure, someone I didn't recognize, burst into the kitchen. I didn't have time to focus on who they were, but they surged toward the men, fists swinging. "Go! Go!" the newcomer shouted at us. We didn't need to be told twice. I yanked the intern along, a mixture of hope and dread flooding my senses. I had made one decision, but now everything hinged on the choices we'd both make next. As we reached for the door, my thoughts spiraled. Who was helping us? Were they truly on our side? And even more pressing, what awaited us outside? The door creaked open. We were met with the chaos of the world outside, and in a matter of seconds, everything could change again. As we stumbled out into the alley, the chaos inside faded into a blur of shouting and crashing. My heart raced with every step. I pulled the intern along, her uncertain footsteps echoing my own fear. "Come on, stay close," I urged, glancing over my shoulder. The sounds of the struggle inside filtered into the night air, and I felt like my skin was crawling. I had no idea if we were safe yet. The alley stretched out before us, dimly lit by flickering streetlights. Shadowy figures darted past, their intentions unclear. "Where do we go?" the intern asked, her voice trembling. I could see the terror in her wide eyes mirroring my own uncertainty. I scanned the alley, looking for an escape route. Something solid. "We need a car," I replied. "We'll head to the street." I could hear the faint sounds of our pursuers behind us, closing in as they regained their senses. Just then, I spotted a silhouette against the night, a figure leaning against a battered sedan, arms crossed and watching us. My instincts screamed for caution, but I was out of options. "Is that—" the intern started, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Stay here," I whispered back, urging her to keep her distance. As I approached, the figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. "Didn't think you'd make it out," my brother said, his voice low and urgent. "Get in!" Relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by new fear. "What are you doing here?" "There's no time. Get in," he insisted, looking anxiously over his shoulder. The intern hesitated behind me. Should we trust him? I felt a surge of doubt, wrestling with the deep-seated urge to protect her. "He's my brother. He can help us," I said, hoping my confidence would reassure both her and me. Without waiting for a response, I yanked the passenger door open and nodded for her to climb in first. She scrambled into the back seat, and I jumped in after her. My brother jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. The car roared to life, and he peeled out of the alley, tires screeching against the pavement. I glanced back at the alley entrance just as two of the men from the kitchen emerged. They paused, their eyes narrowing at the sight of us escaping. "Go, go!" I yelled, gripping the seat as we sped away, leaving the chaos behind. The adrenaline surged again, the close brushes with danger feeding my fear. My brother kept his eyes on the road ahead, the tension thick in the air. "What happened back there?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. I swallowed hard, reeling from everything. They were after us. I don't know why. We need to figure this out now. "Right. I've got a safe place not far from here," he said, glancing at me for a moment. "But we need to be careful." Then it occurred to me. "But how did you know where to find us?" He hesitated, and in that moment I felt a flicker of doubt return. "I got a call. Someone tipped me off that you were in trouble," he replied, but his tone didn't ease the knot in my stomach. "Who?" I pressed, needing concrete answers, something to cling to in this storm of uncertainty. "Someone I don't trust fully," he admitted, jaw tightening. "But they said you were in danger, and I couldn't just wait." I felt my heart drop again. And what if they set you up? My brother clenched the steering wheel, eyes focused on the road. "We'll deal with that later. Right now we need to get out of sight." That's when I spotted a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. "Someone's following us!" I shouted, panic surging through me again. The chase was far from over. The tires squealed as my brother swerved onto a side street, trying to put some distance between us and whoever was behind us. My heart raced, and I felt my palms starting to sweat. The intern turned pale in the back seat, clutching the edges of her seat. "Keep your head down," my brother instructed, his voice sharp with concentration. I leaned forward, peering out the front windshield. The headlights of the car behind us glowed larger as it closed in. "They're getting closer," I exclaimed, panic threading through my voice. "Stay calm," my brother said, but he was gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His eyes darted around for an escape. The city's streets blurred by, the shadows casting eerie patterns across the sidewalk. "We need to lose them," I urged, straining to think straight. "There's a shortcut through the park up ahead." He nodded, but I could see the doubt etched on his face. "It's risky. We could be cornered." "I don't care. If they catch us—" I didn't finish the thought. It hung in the air, heavy and bitter. With all the conviction I could muster, I pointed to the left. "Turn here. We can make it through the park." He gritted his teeth and took the turn, slamming into the gravel road that led into the park. The car jolted and we bounced in our seats as he accelerated. Trees loomed overhead, branches twisting like dark fingers grasping at our escape. We sped deeper into the park, and I could hear the hum of the engine echoing off the surrounding silence. The sounds of the city faded into a haunting stillness, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves. For a moment, it felt we might actually lose them. Then I saw it. A figure darting through the shadows between the trees. I gasped. "There's someone else in here." "What?" my brother said, squinting into the darkness. I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. "We need to keep moving," I said quickly. "It might not just be the car that's after us." He pressed down on the gas pedal, the engine roaring defiantly, as we followed the winding path. I could hear the other car's engine grow louder, too. They weren't far behind. "The road splits up ahead," I shouted, trying to stay sharp. "Which way?" "Left," I yelled. The urgency in my voice broke through his hesitation. He took the turn, and I held my breath. The headlights of the pursuing car sliced through the trees behind us. My brother pushed the car even harder, but it wasn't enough. They were closing in. My hands clenched the dashboard as we hit a bump, jarring everyone. In that moment, I noticed a flash of headlights veering off the main road. "There," I pointed, a desperation rising in me. "They just went off to the right. Maybe they think we won't follow." "Do they expect us to?" my brother said, his voice taut. "I don't care. We need to take the risk." His jaw set in determination. He turned sharply onto the smaller path that branched off from ours. The car jolted again, but he kept going, chasing shadows in the dim light. Then it happened. A loud crash echoed behind us. A tree had fallen across the path. We weren't just being followed, we were being trapped. And that's when I realized I hadn't just been followed from work. This was personal. Someone wanted us caught. Now what? The intern asked, her voice breaking through the panic. I don't know, I said, feeling the weight of dread settle in my chest. It was time for answers, but I feared I wouldn't like them. The sudden crash echoed in the darkness, and I felt my heart race with a mix of adrenaline and dread. We were cornered, a tree blocking our path behind us, the road splitting ahead into two uncertain routes. My mind raced as I assessed our limited options. Turn around, I urged my brother, but he was already scanning the area for another way out. This isn't the end, he muttered, more to himself than to us, and my stomach churned with worry. It was clear the men who had been chasing us wouldn't let us go easily. I could still hear their voices behind us, their intent eerily mingling with the sounds of the night. I glanced at the intern. She looked terrified, her eyes darting around as if expecting another danger to materialize. Find a way through the trees, I said, desperate for a plan. We can try to circle back to the street. My brother nodded, his grip tightening on the wheel. He shifted the car into reverse, and we felt the jolt as we backed rapidly toward the larger opening in the road. It was a risk, but it seemed to be the only way. Duck down, he shouted, and we followed his command, hunching down in our seats as he gunned the engine, urgency rippling through every move he made. Just as we cleared the shot of the fallen tree, I caught sight of a shadow moving swiftly through the thicket ahead. There! Someone's in the trees! But my brother was already on full alert. I see it! We need to get out of here now! In the rearview mirror, the lights of the pursuing car flickered ominously. We were still being hunted. The branches whipped against the car as he barreled through the less defined path. It felt as if the trees were closing in on us, nature itself conspiring to trap us. My heart thudded heavily, and when we emerged onto a clear stretch of road, I gasped for a moment of relief. Then I froze. The pursuing car was gaining fast. Go, go! I yelled, uncertainty pricking at the edges of my determination. The engine roared defiantly as my brother pushed the accelerator, but I knew it might not be enough. We sped further down the road, a sense of foreboding surrounding us. The city lights loomed ahead, a distant beacon of hope, but so far away. As we continued down the empty street, I turned to the intern again, desperate for reassurance. Hang in there, I said, we'll get out of this. That's when I noticed a flicker out of the corner of my eye. What was that? It was another shadow darting past. Did you see it? I turned sharply back to my brother. They're everywhere. He looked frantic now, glancing in the rear view. We're being led. Led where? Panic surged through me. To what? Before I could finish that thought, a horrifying realization struck me. The shadows weren't just behind us. They were closing in from the sides as well. Shapes began to emerge, enhancing the sense that we were trapped in an orchestrated nightmare. My brother slammed on the brakes, narrowly avoiding a nightmarish tableau. A series of figures clothed in dark clothing stood in the distance, shrouded in shadows, their faces obscured, waiting patiently. It felt like we had entered a theater of predation. Turn around! We have to get out! I shouted, my heart racing as he twisted the wheel hard, the car spinning in the opposite direction. Is this really happening? The intern whimpered, bracing herself against the seat. A loud bang echoed from the back. The threats were closing in, and even in the dim light I could see the glint of something metallic shining in their hands. I can't. My brother was struggling to regain control. The breathing in the car felt heavier, panic swirling around us. What do we do? I yelled. I don't know. Just then the darkness swelled and the sound of footsteps filled the air, a chorus of shouts, of anger, until the figures rushed toward us. My breath hitched as I realized everything was culminating into a singular decision point. Whatever fate awaited us, it was creeping ever closer. Trust me, my brother said, and before I could respond he accelerated forward again, the tires screeching as we blasted toward the figures, a wave of daring in his eyes. We're crashing through. Are you insane? I shouted, clutching the edge of the seat. But even in that instant something shifted. Figures divided, some stepping back, shadows dissipating as the ground seemed to shake beneath us. It was as if they were more phantom than flesh, driven by motives beyond our grasp. In an audacious lunge, we surged ahead, scattering the shadows as we broke free from their grasp, barreling down the winding road toward the unknown. I could sense the urgency, the fear pulsing through my veins, and I clung to it fiercely. And then, silence. As we cleared the reach of their imposing presence, an eerie calm wrapped around us. The city lights grew closer. My heart raced, a mix of relief and uncertainty washing over me. But in that moment, I felt a strange flicker of doubt. What truly just happened back there? Was that even real, or had it been a collective hallucination, conjured by the fear coursing through us? "Are we safe?" the intern asked, voice low, glancing back as if checking for shadows. I think so," I managed, not fully convinced. As we drove farther away, I kept looking back, expecting to see familiar figures lurking at the edges of my vision. But they were gone. The road stretched ahead, but the questions remained. Who had been chasing us? What did they want? And had our escape truly severed the ties to that darkness? As we entered the bright lights of the city, the sense of safety felt fragile, mere layers over a wellspring of unanswered questions. I had been spared, this time. But what lay ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. Sometimes shadows cling tighter than the light. I wasn't sure if we were truly free. All I knew was that I wouldn't feel safe again for a long time.